The artist formerly known as Peggy Q is accepting money for the purchase of the UA memorabilia, of which some has already sold out, by the by. Uh-huh. Thank you. So if you want to buy something, just give your money to Peggy Q. If you don't want to buy something, just give your money to Peggy Q. Lost and found, this was Sydney turned this in, so if anybody has lost this, we have it. We'll have it in our possession. Right there. Okay. Great. So just to recap where we were at yesterday, and this is a preface for the workshop that Peter's about to present. The committee is grouped. They begin to prepare their motions, and some of the motions came forward. The first motion that was presented was by the World Service Committee, and that motion was to have next year's World Service Conference be held here in Los Angeles at this venue in the same time frame. That motion passed, so that's something that we can let people know coming in. I think that's the motion to have the next World Service Conference here, 2014. So John, we'll just save you a room by the beach.
I'm just going to stay here until then.
Okay. All right. All right, cool. Oh, yeah, the dates haven't been hard set, but it's a good suggestion that we if possible, we work it around Labor Day. Oh, thank you, Mike. Yeah, that's what I'm about to do, yeah.
So, same time, same place next year here. All we know is August. August is she. So the final dates, yes, not hard, but please tell your groups, your committees, start saving like from now, if you can. It'll be helpful. Okay.
Yeah, that would help. That would help a lot of people if we could book it around Labor Day.
Is that the general preference of the conference? Yes? No? Maybe? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Could we have a show of hands, please?
Straw poll.
Straw poll, please. Show of hands.
To have the straw poll to have the weekend held here wrapped around Labor Day weekend.
Yes?
This is just a straw poll.
Yeah, they will. We'll add them to the
Yeah, we're
pool
just
of votes.
taking a general sense right now.
Don't vote twice.
Okay. So it's not been defined. I just want to let people know that the motion's been passed to have it held here next year around the same time frame. Thank you. So that was the first motion that was presented and passed. The second motion that was presented was by the Phone and Technology Committee regarding qualifications and terms for meeting coordinators, those who coordinate the moderators on the meetings. That motion was returned back to that committee. They're going to re-present that motion or a different motion if they choose to today. The third motion that was introduced, which did pass, was from the Public Information Committee, and it was a motion that was UA's statement on how to engage with the media, what is and isn't acceptable, what UA asks, and it was clearly defined. There were a couple adjustments made for grammar purposes. There was a friendly amendment that was made just about the wording in particular, about what UA's primary purpose is, and that passed. And that catches us up from yesterday, and the intent today is, what have you done? The intent today is to hear from the Finance Committee and hear their motion, put that up to the group, to hear from the Literature Committee and hear their motion, and to hear from the Service Structure Committee. And I would strongly encourage us to do what we can to get their primary motions addressed, if not put through, if they're appropriate. And that would take us up probably until 12 o'clock. No, I didn't. I addressed that. I said that the mission was sent back to you, that the motion was sent back to you, and that you'll have an opportunity to come back up and bring that motion back or present a different one.
And in the morning we elected the officers.
Yesterday morning.
Yesterday morning.
Yes, yes.
Which I have a listing of the officers.
Thank you.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
I have
I have the chair of the Journal Service Board is now Tamia. The vice chair is now Matt. The head treasurer, co-treasurer is Andrew. The secretary is Ed. The traditions keeper, it remains Janice. Misa remains the information officer. And then the World Service Committee, the World Service chair is Bella. The treasurer and tech committee is Steve. Secretary, co-secretary is Steve. Literature committee, Peter. Oh, it's not?
World Service Committee is Bella.
Yes, World Service Committee chair is Bella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not,
You're not treasurer and tech?
I'm staying on to wrap up this season's worth of treasury for WS.
Is there somebody new that is taking over?
Somebody that may take over, yeah.
We just don't have anybody yet.
Yeah, not in me.
We don't have anyone yet. So is that the only correction?
Yeah.
Are you going to remain secretary, co-secretary, Steve R.?
No, not on the World Service Committee.
Do we have a new secretary?
That might be an internal committee position that we're not going to worry about.
We'll get one.
Okay.
Matt, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just addressing really quickly. Just want to be able to talk about this really quickly. There's been some concern that we're taking a lot of time with committee work. Okay, all the motions and elections, but mostly the committee work and having to do the debates and doing the process that we voted in place, and that it's looking like it's questionable, very questionable, whether we'll get to hot topics such as what's the definition of sponsor, the requirements for sponsorship, those kinds of things. I'll just couch it in that frame. And I just want to point out that we're in a position here where we have a limited amount of time. We're learning as we go along about how long things take to debate with the new process that we have in place for voting, minority opinion, et cetera, and we're confronted with a situation where we have to make a choice. So our schedule for this morning doesn't include any time to be able to have debate on the issues that we talked about. Some of the issues that we talked about in the town hall, we're focusing on committee work right now and trying to present motions, and we're seeing how long it takes. So I'm really not in favor right now of having a debate like we had yesterday morning, although it was necessary to determine what our schedule is here right now. We'll be on time if I end right now at 10:30 and Peter comes up here at 10:30. Okay, so I just want to point out that what we're trying to do here is feel our way through this, allow God into the process, use our guts to determine our senses, our intuition, what's the best thing for this body, this fellowship right now. We are taking feedback from people who've approached us with their concerns. And we're doing our best in that framework with that methodology to come up with a decision about how to construct our schedule. I just want to say that to get some, to get that out there. I don't really know any better way to do it. I don't know if you want to add anything, Matt. I'll acknowledge also, one interesting thing that was pointed out to me was that as the committees presented their motions yesterday and we started to flesh things out and utilize this new engine of being able to bring motions to the body and then be able to bring them to vote, we're learning about how long these things take. And I think that's a really important process. Andrew mentioned to me the importance, the imbalanced importance that I know that I placed on what are we going to come up with? What's going to be our tangibles when this thing is done? And although that's important, it's also really important to just value the learning curve that we're on right now, knowing that we're going to get better at this. Committees are going to get better at being able to really concisely describe what their motions are. And I'll stop there. Yeah, Mike.
Okay, quick comment about, issues that people have about defining sponsorship, all that kind of stuff. You need to start thinking about how can that be put into motion, because theoretically the only things that should be discussed at this event is motions. Obviously that's not happening this time, but as we heard from a couple people that have been in other conferences, it's motions. It's all-day motions. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have fun and do other stuff, but the motions are number one. We obviously were working on getting a process in for motions, but for an example, definition of sobriety, or prosperity, put that into a motion and bring that into a recommendation that can be in a service manual or in a meeting format. But it has to be thinking in motion, because I guarantee you we could spend 3 days talking about the definition of prosperity and the definition of abstinence. How do I know that? Because I've spent 3 days talking about that in a conference like this.
Can I make a...
I would say that and it's been pointed out to me, and I'd love to, in fact, why don't I hear from you first? And then
Okay, I just wanted to respond to this topic. I personally was thinking I think it would be a great idea just to have a brainstorming session either here later if we have time or during the weekend or even on the Google groups because we can all go on there and to just get as much input in this area as we can of members, everybody coming up with their definitions because one person came up with a definition before and the more ideas and different ways of looking at it we get, the better definition we'll come up with as a whole, and that we can continue this process if we have time. Spend a half an hour here, and people throw up, sometime during the weekend, and just write, all the different things, and then you come up with a clearer view of it, or the different definition of sponsorship or sobriety or whatever. So I just want to add that that's not just because we don't have a clear motion, it might even be better to have more input and people thinking about it. And
thank you, Janice.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mike and Janice, for that. And I would say, when in doubt, go back to the traditions and the concepts and the 12 steps. And third tradition states there are no requirements for membership, which also implies, there are no requirements for recovery. Right? So that's what I'm going to have to bring back to as a GSR, I'm bringing that back to my group. The third tradition states there are no requirements for membership in this program. And that's where we stand. And I think what we're talking about is how do we get communication from the ground up, from the fellowship up? How do we connect to what has worked? For example, the definition of abstinence and insolvency. There are other programs that have defined that. They've agreed upon that. That's working for them. We can use that as a template or at least as a reference point. What is bottom line behavior, what's sobriety, all these things are important to talk about, but when in doubt, we can go to things, thank you, when in doubt, we can go to things that are already working and build from there. That's my suggestion to people moving forward.
Thanks. I'll just introduce Peter. So, we turn it over? So, Peter, come on up.
I was going to say that in a minute. First off, this has been a very abundant week for me, a weekend. What is it? A week. I found a credit card. I found car keys. I now have a jewelry. So if someone recognizes this jewelry, please come and collect it. I don't. Okay, so timekeeping. Yeah, I've got half an hour. I'm thinking it's 20 minutes of me talking and 10 minutes you asking questions. It might not take that long, but if you give me a warning at 15 minutes, see, I know I'm waffling, which is pretty likely. So my topic is beyond Robert's rules. People, process, and productivity. So let's look at where we are. We know what bad looks like. I didn't mean this in a cynical way, but it may seem cynical after this week. But we know what it looks like if we get bogged down in these horrible processes of motion, counter-motion, friendly amendment, not being able to come to agreement. Let's talk about Robert's rules for a second. I don't come here to criticize them, but they've got a purpose. They were written by an army officer who was writing for other army officers after the Civil War to stop these army officers from killing each other in the state legislatures. He based his procedures on English parliamentary procedure. That's good, but who developed English parliamentary procedures? No, the English aren't the English. The English are the Angles, right? The Angles aren't even on this list. The Celts, the Saxons, the Anglo-Saxons, that's where England comes from. The Vikings, the Normans, they were all army officers invading the country, trying to come to agreement with each other. Okay, think about that. So who uses Robert's rules? The US Congress. Do I actually need to say any more than that? It wasn't designed, it's not suitable for a committee. And let's be very clear about that. So Roberta's Rules of Order. That's how you buy it. It's a good book. It's not rules at all. That's called Roberta's Rules. It's a series of suggestions and guidelines. Well, that's how we work in a program, suggestions and guidelines. Principles. So she's saying, how does a small non-profit board work? It's about decision-making, planning and running meetings, keeping discussions focused and productive, and then designing the organization. How do we govern and how do we have our bylaws? It's built around principles that we'll all be very happy with. We're all comfortable with these principles. Inclusion, getting everybody's input, consensus. And when she talks about inclusion, she's not just talking about a bunch of white guys sitting around a table. How do we get input from other people than me holding the microphone? You're black. you're American, you're English, you're Turkish, you're Swedish. We don't speak the same language, we don't have the same concepts. How do we get consensus with different people? She talks about that. Vision. A major point in her book is about vision. We love vision, it's our program. Our number one thing we use is a vision. Do we have a vision statement? It's all about vision, goals, actions. So if you're here, it's because you're interested in how to run a small non-profit board, which is what this thing is. So go buy the book. And I know it's not UA to endorse an outside commercial enterprise. This is me endorsing it. It's a really good book. Okay, so what do we do now? Hopefully we don't do this. Oh, you can all read it. A motion has been made that we dispense with the pompous formalities of parliamentary procedure and communicate like human beings. Does anyone second the motion? All right, so let's talk about committees. Last year we met. First World Service Conference, also called the Proto-World Service Conference, and by some people just ignored altogether. We did the same thing we did this year, last year. We set up 12 committees. That number's wrong. 4 of the committees met, okay? Only 4 of them met. The other 6, or 8, sorry, the other 8 disappeared.
That's not exactly.
It's true enough. All right, but this is not a debate, Mike. This is my talking head. You had your turn 3 times. It's my turn. If there are rules for making a committee work or magic, how do we make it different? We need to make it different this year. It didn't work last year. I think we're all in agreement about that. If there are rules for making a committee work or a magic wand to make it happen, I don't know them. Clearly nobody here knows them. And that's not an insult. It's not taking your inventory. It didn't happen this week. So in the meantime, I'm going to make my suggestions based on some things that some very successful businesses do. My day job is for a hedge fund. They make batshit loads of money. I don't recommend all their processes. They believe in brutal honesty. That's not fun. I believe in gentle honesty. But they do some things that are really effective. There are things we do in recovery from under-earning. We have principles in this program. We have tools in this program that we use to recover. We can use them on our committees. And then we did some things that look like they work with the literature committee. So I'm going to share those. And some of these appear in Roberta's rules. That's entirely by accident. I didn't read that book before I started the committee. When I say started, before we started the committee. It wasn't a solo effort. So no rules. But there's one thing you've really got to keep in mind. What is the cost of a committee meeting? Mike, what's your daily rate? If you want to share it. Give me a ballpark. 800 a day. Who wants to share the daily rate? 800? 200. Sorry, 200? All right. Multiply that number by everyone in this room by 4 days. Before air travel, before car rental, before the cost of staying here, that's how much it's cost this program in our donated time to have this conference. This is the measure that businesses use to figure out if something's productive or not. How much did it cost us? What's the benefit we're getting from it? So in the business world, group meetings, anything more than 3 people, are seen as very expensive. And it doesn't matter if it's in person or on the phone. You take 4 people, their hourly rate's $125, multiply that by 4, it's $600, I think, $500. That's the cost of that meeting. Did we get what we wanted out of it? So when we have a meeting, we want to use it for the most important things we want to get done. Coming to agreement and brainstorming. We can only do that in a group. That's how groups work. We brainstorm, we agree with each other. We find ways to do things together, okay? That's what groups are for. Everything else can be done offline. Whether we're reading things out, which I'm doing right now, doing the things the group needs to be agreed needs to be done. So working is not a group activity. Take it away from the meeting. Don't work at the meeting. I know we've been doing that this week. But if we want to be productive, we won't try and work at the meeting. Role-playing 19th century army officers and US congressmen, I don't think that's productive. If you do, then you have your free time. So this is a tool that comes from this very successful company. The founder says when something's not working, and when we have a goal, so an issue or a goal, we've got to look at two things, the process and the people. And what he goes on to say is everyone looks at the process because no one wants to talk about the people. People over personalities, what is it? Principles over personalities. We always say that. If we only focus on the process without thinking about the people, we cannot be productive. So what kind of people are we? What's bad about us? What are our symptoms? What's good about us? What are our principles? This is the interactive part. Okay. Which one do I want? I want to use purple. Purple's a royal color. I want to use purple. So what are our symptoms? Oh, that's brown.
Exertion, exhaustion.
One minute. I've not quite got this right. Up. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So, actually, does anyone have clear handwriting? Please step up and write for me, or no one will be able to read it. Okay. Symptoms. So, what were the symptoms again?
Troublemaking.
Troublemaking.
Under-earners make trouble for others.
One at a time.
And themselves.
Just one word is fine. 2 words. Putting things off. Procrastination.
Over-engineering.
Right. One at a time. Vagueness. The back.
Meandering speech.
I think that's vagueness, but we'll put it down. Meandering. Impatience. Okay. After that, impatience. One minute. Impatience. Okay, next one.
Inaction.
Sorry? Inaction. You already went, but you can go again. Fear, that's a great one. Okay, what else have we got? Clutter. That's a good one. We can put dishonest here, but I don't know where we're going to put it.
On this side, right?
This side. So I think that's enough. This is a board full. I have some more suggestions of my own. But we know what our symptoms are. We've been in this program with a big list of symptoms. We know what our symptoms are. All right. So, but what else have we got? We've got principles. We're principled people. We do this in a principled way. This successful company lives by its principles. You can read them online. You want to see how the most successful man in the world, in terms of creating a hedge fund from his bedroom, created his hedge fund. He puts his principles on the internet so anyone can read them. It's not quite spelled out, it's all right. That's fine. So give me some UA principles, some, not just UA step. What are 12-step principles? Sorry? Open-mindedness. Honesty.
Willingness.
Not brutal, sorry. Gentle honesty. I'm not doing it the hedge fund way. Okay. Service. Great. Vision.
Passion.
So vision. Oh, 1 minute, we're catching up.
Courage.
So service, vision. Action, that's another good one. Perseverance, you can add your own suggestions.
Spirituality.
Spirituality, very important. All right?
Courage.
1 minute. Courage, integrity. You can keep going down one. Surrender, another good one. That's kind of service. Tolerance, openness, yeah, absolutely. Forgiveness. All right.
Flexibility.
Now, there are more. I don't want to say it's complete, but we've got a lot of things in our bucket. We've got a lot of bad things. We've got a lot of good things. So when we design our processes, we've got to look at these and say, okay, how do these things fit into our process? What they do to us, if we have a process in mind, how does it affect us when we follow that process? So we're trying to follow Robert's rules with idea deflection, with, what do we call it here? Troublemaking. You know, we've got all this stuff. We're trying to follow Robert's rules. For Robert's rules, you have to follow it in a very specific way. If you don't follow it in a very specific way, it does not work. So we're trying to follow Robert's rules with these symptoms. And I leave it to the service structure committee to figure that one out, please. There are other ways to do this. So here's my suggestions, and these are mostly the same. You know, self-will run riot. Who recognizes that one? Stinking thinking. I'm not saying it's anybody in particular. I'm just saying these are things we do. These are things I do. Staying in the cave. We feel we don't have a voice. We feel reluctant to raise our voice. That's not right, but I better not say anything. Over-volunteering. I think most of us are good at that. Well, I know I am. Feeling worthless. We don't charge our true value. We're fine sitting in a meeting that's not going very well because we don't value our time. Stability, boredom, and disruption. Really good at that. Not following up. We're going to create a great list of actions coming out of this meeting. Are we going to follow them up? Okay? So we're going to put guardrails around ourselves. The guardrails are what keep us on track, even though we've got these flaws. We're powerless over under-earning. We're not going to recover tomorrow and suddenly not have any of these things. What we will have is a program around us with guardrails for those things. That's what the tools are. That's what the steps are. Okay? Program principles. These are pretty much the same. One step at a time. Let go and let God. Progress, not perfection. Blah, blah, blah. This is all my stuff. We need to make sure our processes are consistent with our principles. So let's do it the UA way. I need to move this. Oh, wait, that's not going to work. All right. The UA way. What's our major thing? We have a vision. We have a goal from the vision. Our goals are consistent with our visions. Actions then come out the goals. So if we're on a committee, let's first agree on our vision and our approach. If we don't do that, we're here. We're coming up with actions, which is what we did in under-earning, without the vision. For the most part, our vision is to serve the needs of the UA Fellowship. That's not enough, honestly. I mean, it's the start of a vision, right? We're in service. We're serving the needs of the UA Fellowship as part of our recovery. But then you've got to take that vision and say, well, my committee is doing this. What's my vision for this committee? What's our vision for this committee? And you come to agreement then. You've got the vision. Now you've got to agree on the goals. What are the issues we're solving? What are the problems we're solving? What are our goals? Agree on the goals. And then we've got to prioritize the goals. We had, 100 issues, 200 issues coming into this conference. We had 100, 200 more coming, we generated here. That's a lot of work. We will not be able to do all that work in the coming year. We need to come to agreement what our priorities are on a committee. What work are we going to do first with the people who are here today? I don't mean here today, but on the committee meeting here. So, I hope that makes sense. And then we take actions on the prioritized goals. Now we know what we're doing in a program way. I see Mike looking very stern. I think he hates it. That's good. Inclusiveness, not having a voice. How do we deal with that? Well, let's get input on any issue we're looking at from as many people as possible. It can't just be my views, because I've got stinking thinking. Right? I'm going to be wrong. Thank you very much. I'm going to be wrong. So I want other people's input to make sure that if I'm wrong, I find out very quickly. We make sure that everyone gets a chance to express their views and their opinions on these issues. Everyone on the committee. It's very important that everybody has a voice. I'm sure we'll agree with that. Time awareness. Oh, we squander time up and down. Timed agendas for our meetings. We don't want a 1-hour meeting taking 2.5 hours. Our time is valuable to us. Have a timed agenda, and we do not run over. We'll discuss it next time. Timekeeping. We have a timekeeper on the meeting. Someone has to keep time and track us. We do this in our group meetings. We occasionally do it on the GSB. We've done it here occasionally. We need to do it all the time. We've got to be very sensitive to time. Keep it simple. That's a great slogan. I love that slogan. Brief meeting minutes. We don't need a screed with every word that was said at a meeting. We need to know who was there, what was decided, what was agreed. Who's going to do what? Who is going to do what are they going to do, and by when are they going to do it? That's the bare minimum we need from a meeting. That's all we need to do. We don't need to do more than the bare minimum. Clarity. Clarity is a great principle. Clear agendas. Where's the meeting going to be? If it's a phone line, how do we get onto it? When's it going to be? What's the format? What are we going to talk about? What decisions will be made? That's very important. We need to document what we've done. We have a box over there with the work from the past 7 years. No one knows what's in it. It's inaccessible. That's useless. So let's make our work accessible. One step at a time. I'll add the symptom of exertion exhaustion. We overwork. We all overwork. That's why we're here. How do we stop overworking? We do one thing at a time. We take one step at a time. If we have this big mountainous task, a share a day, for example, Mike's actually a proponent of this. He does a very good job on share a days because he divides the share a day up into, okay, you decide where it's going to be. You make the calls, you make the coffee, this. Everybody gets one little task that they can manage. So if we have a big task, let's make it manageable for the individuals. And if I'm the only person doing the work, what's my first action? My first action is to find someone else to take the second action. Okay? Has to be. And I'm not talking about that from UA. I'm talking about from an alumni group I got stuck with the presidency of. I know what exertion exhaustion is. I know what the service treadmill is from outside the program. This happens everywhere. It happens to everybody. The inverted pyramid. Mike loves drawing it. It's a good, solid picture. We serve the fellowship. It's not the CEO at the top. It's not the chairman. It's not the WSC at the top. The fellowship is at the top of this pyramid. They're in charge. They're our bosses. Service means doing what someone else is telling you to do. That might come as a surprise. It came as a surprise to me. I want to do what I want to do. Oh, no, wait a minute. This is service. What's a servant? A servant doesn't stand there giving the boss the orders. You can't be on that phone meeting. You can't say this in a meeting. We all have to do that. It's not true. We're not the boss. We need to make sure we're accountable to the fellowship. How we do that? We try to do it through here, okay? But we need to make sure we've got ways of being accountable. We need to make sure we've got the fellowship can see what we're doing. You know, we pass these motions, we didn't stick them up on the wall. We've done it now, I think, I hope. How can people need to see what we're doing? They just know what we're doing because they say, well, wait a minute, what did you do with all that money we gave you for that conference you just had? You know, they're probably picturing us all sitting on the beach drinking tequilas. Some are sicker, I don't have a good way of saying this, I don't want to be negative. Some are sicker than others. That's a saying. We all come from different programs or we come from none at all. The different programs do things differently. They do the same things in different ways. If I come here expecting that you're going to do it the same way I did it in DA, or if someone comes and wants to do it the same way as NA, or some way as SLA, and some way OA, I forget all the different groups we've got represented here. And some people have not been to a program before. They're thinking, well, let's do it the way I did it in business. We can't assume other people will think the same way we do. We can't assume they'll have the same experience we have. We cannot assume they'll make the same decisions we will make. We have to negotiate. We have to agree. So, like I say, this list is my list. There's a bigger list over here. All our committees have to think for themselves how we're going to make this committee work. There's no rule. That's 20? Great. So, let me jump ahead. You can read this presentation, but I'll make sure it's available. I'm going to take 2 minutes just to skip through all the rest of the slides so you can see what's there. Who's the most important people on the committee? The committee members. If you do not show up and do the work that needs to be done, we'll be in the same place next year that we are today. Remember that. Okay?
They did meet. Stop saying they didn't meet. Come on. They did meet.
I did deflection. Shut up. Tradition keeper. So these are all the roles we need. I explained why we need them. I hope they're self-evident because I can't explain them right now. How do we come to substantial agreement? This is important. An emotion is an action. Motions are good things, but they're actions. They're a solution. How do we get agreement on an action if we haven't agreed on the goal, if we haven't agreed on the problem? So we start with the problem, agree on the problem, then agree on the solution. But what does that mean? How do we come to agreement? That should be purple. It's not looking purple for some reason. You know, we start out by opening up the discussion. We gather as much information as possible. Then we narrow it down. We start narrowing the options. We start organizing it. We sort it. We say prioritize it. Maybe we can't get it done this time. You know, maybe this thing's better than that thing. We start this is the hard part right here. Narrowing our options. That's where people come to fistfights. Step 3. We close the discussion. Right now, here, we've got 2, 3, 4 options. We've got a clear picture of what each of them means, what it costs, if it's cost, what it costs, what the drawbacks are, what the opportunities are. Maybe looking at phone systems, this service does this service does that. But it's very easy at this point to have a decision because you know what the options are. But don't forget, you can always negotiate. It may be that we've got 3 options and we can pick part of option A and part of option B and part of option C. But that's work. I just keep reminding you of that. I'm going to skip that. It's in Roberta's rules. You can read it. This is something Mike sent me. It's very effective. You can read it on your own time. Okay, great. Sorry about that.
Can I make a motion for more time if needed?
What's next on the schedule? Let's pay attention to the time. Time awareness.
Peter.
I had half an hour. I've squandered all my time. And I'll actually give up 5 minutes to the next section, and I will be emailing this to the Google group. If you're not on the Google group, see me, because I have control of it, somehow. And I will add you very gladly.
Thank you very much.
peter.nyc.ua@gmail.com. Okay. Yeah, it's peter.nyc.ua@gmail.com.
Peter, you'll make that available online, and then I can just download a hard copy as well, yeah? Great. Thank you very much.
Hey, Matt. Just a quick announcement. Anybody that's here that's a GSR that's not on the email list for the GSB, please give your email address to Peter before you leave here, so that you can get on that email list, because then you'll have his address that way too.
Are they one and the same email list? Thank you.
Say it again.
I was asking if it's the same email as Google Groups that you were mentioning about putting this.
If it was UAGSB Google group.
You didn't say that. You said the email.
Okay. Yeah. Any GSRs? Yeah. You can email him and ask to be put on, but you should be put on that mailing list. Yeah.
Yes. I have most of it, and the rest hasn't been turned into me yet, but I've made a request for that. Yeah. Just a reminder for those who are on committees, including the committee chairs, I want to make sure that I either get a hard copy or an email from you with the committee chair, the name of the committee chair, the members of the committee, and then email addresses and phone numbers that you would like to make available to myself. And it's really important for me that I get that ideally before we go into this afternoon, but definitely before we leave for this weekend. Otherwise, I'm cooked. And then Mike will be replacing me. No, Mike will be on the beach. Okay, great. So moving into motions, and I believe that the Finance Committee has a motion to present.
And what are the time frames for each?
As quickly or slowly as we move through them. I understand, but we didn't have specificity about time frames yesterday. The way this was presented, I understand, the way this was presented yesterday was that each committee would present their primary motion, it would be addressed, and then we would move on to the next committee, and if all those committees got to present their motions, we'd go back around.
So what if they don't get to a long day?
No. I mean, the group has to be aware of the fact that we have a limited amount of time, so I leave that up to the group's conscience to dictate how we get through stuff. I'll do my best to steer it. No, there's a clock right there. I mean, the schedule says that 12 o'clock is when we move into the closing bit of things. but I can't regulate each particular motion. Peggy, I'm not accepting a timekeeper for this.
No, I'm saying if I request when I come up, it's not
Absolutely. You get whatever you need. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So that being said, please.
Hi, I'm Karen, recovering under-earner. Good morning, everybody. All right, we have one motion to present, and it's fairly non-controversial, I believe, so hopefully this will be quick. All right, we move that once a quarter, by April 30th, July 30th, October 30th, and January 30th, the General Service Board, through the work of the Finance Committee, present to the UA Fellowship as a whole an income statement and a balance sheet for the most recent quarter and also year to date. This presentation would be to the GSRs through the monthly GSB meeting to bring back to their groups, and also through the newsletter, Voices of the Fellowship. Also that the GSB present a spending plan for UA for the upcoming quarter, and that the GSB compare in writing the figures from the most recent quarter and year-to-date with the corresponding spending plan for that period of time, and that the GSB present the spending plan for the oh, wait a minute, that's repetitious, never mind. All right, that's it. Well, it says that the GSB present the spending plan for the upcoming quarter and remaining year-to-date, but I think that was already stated in number 2. Yeah, okay, so.
So would you please just repeat the motion as it stands, just for clarity?
Sure, and I believe Mike is working on getting that up on the screen, so that will be helpful too, but I'll read it again. Okay. We move that once a quarter, by April 30th, July 30th, October 30th, and January 30th, the General Service Board, through the work of the Finance Committee, present to the UA Fellowship as a whole an income statement and a balance sheet for the most recent quarter and also year-to-date. This presentation would be to the GSRs through the monthly GSB meeting to bring back to their groups, and also through the newsletter Voices of the Fellowship. That the GSB present a spending plan for UA for the upcoming quarter, and that the GSB compare in writing the figures from the most recent quarter and year-to-date with the corresponding spending plan for that period of time.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so I understand the first part. That's clear. I'm in agreement. I'm not clear on the second part when you say the GSP has to present a spending plan. Who are you guys on the finance as part of the GSB going to come up with a spending plan? Who's going to come up with the spending plan?
I would believe we do that partly by looking on history, like what have we historically spent, and then taking the initiatives from the various committees.
No, you're talking about how. I understand.
Okay,
how.
who?
Who would be
You know, I would
responsible,
imagine the GSB with help from the Finance Committee.
Well, that's what you said. So my question is, since you're in charge of finance and you're dealing with numbers, wouldn't it be the Finance Committee that would... It seems like everybody else has other responsibilities, so I'm asking for more clarity in that area, and I would suggest that you guys come up with a spending plan as part of the Finance Committee. I would think that would be more in your area of expertise and work. So that's my comment on your motion. Thanks.
All right. On my responses, we could certainly do the work of putting it all together in a cohesive form, but I don't think we have the authority to decide what the initiatives would be.
A proposed spending plan? Maybe you come up with a proposed spending plan, is that, or something? Okay, that's it. I'm going to leave it there.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, my question is that part of the motion that the Finance Committee specifically comes up with a proposed spending plan? Because I don't want to vote for anything unless I know that there's somebody who's committed to actually doing the work.
Well, the motion literally states that the GSB present a spending plan. So, all right, members of the Finance Committee, I guess I'm at a loss here.
But that's the point. I need to know people.
Can I have the committee chair speak to that? Yeah.
Question again.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Please.
Okay. My question is, who is actually going to do the work?
We will.
Thank you.
Well, I would just say that just suggest that you word that in your wording, that the Finance Committee will come up with a spending plan and present it, because the way you have it worded, you said the GSP will, through the finance. You're not real clear. That's all. Thanks.
We'll do the work. We'll present it to the UAGSB. The UAGSB can raise questions on it and suggest modifications to it, and that'll be the process. But it's our job to come up with that plan based on the history of expenditures within UA.
So is this just a question of wording then, instead of the GSB present, that the Finance Committee present the spending plan, which is going to depend upon GSB approval, right? And then in 3A, that the Finance Committee prepare in writing the figures, which is going to ultimately be decided by GSB approval. Is that where we're at?
There's some area where he says the GSB will come up with the spending plan. That needs to be clear.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Because that's not their job.
I think what you're saying is the GSB prepares a draft for proposal to the the Finance Committee prepares the proposal. It goes to the GSB. The GSB has the power to approve it or change it, and they have the ultimate authority, because it doesn't say who. You're going to get into it the way it's worded.
Yeah,
we submitted the draft, but you changed it.
Right.
So
Well, listen, we're of service to the General Service Board, and they could say, hey, this is crazy. You want to spend $500 a month on lollipops? You can't do that. Yeah.
So then it should be worded that the proposal is made by the Finance Committee,
yes,
and the GSB takes that proposal and enacts that or revises it as it sees fit.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Tov mod.
So if I'm clear to understand, so you agree as the chair of the Finance Committee, you agree that it needs to. Sorry about that. So as the chair of the Finance Committee, you agree that it needs to be reworded?
Yeah.
And that you would just present it reworded? Yeah. Okay. So what's that? Also, that the Finance Committee prepare, in conjunction with the GSB, a spending plan for the upcoming quarter. That wasn't my understanding. My understanding was that the Finance Committee would prepare a spending plan which they would present to the GSB, and the GSB would then have the authority to decide what to do with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Finance Committee prepare a spending plan for the GSB.
I think if the question that I asked and Andrew's answer, it should be recorded, and so we have the words there on the recording. If there's and that should be sufficient to make whatever changes.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So if you were I'm drawing a blank here. If you accepted what Steve said as far as the wording, and it's just about rewording it, and as Steve said, it's on the recording, then we can pull off that recording, get the wording changed. And would the group then be willing, since you accepted it, would the group then be willing, is there any other questions about this? Maggie.
How about the verb approve, for the GSB to approve for UA for the upcoming quarter instead of for the GSB to present?
Yeah, it's in what Steve mentioned as well, because he said approved, or you were specific about what the options were.
I think we covered I think that's covered there in what was said. I can't repeat that.
Okay. So my suggestion would be that since you agree with what Steve presented, and there don't seem to be the questions that have been brought up all seem to be in the same vein, my suggestion would be, and I don't know if this is a precedent, but that we actually vote on it with the understanding that the words as they've been presented by Steve, which address the questions, hang on, I'm almost finished, will be that motion, and that's what we're going to be voting on. That's my suggestion. Melvin? I need you on the mic, though, yeah? Oh, you're just making the motion?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Second.
Okay, second. Thank you. All right, we're open for discussion. 2 for and 2 against. I'm sorry, we'll do 1 and 1. So 1 for. No, nothing says we have to have discussion. If we want to vote on it, we can vote on it. But I want to make sure everybody's got a voice. So if there's a for that feels compelled to speak, please do so.
What did Peter say? We all want. Okay. For too long, this fellowship has not been transparent to the membership, and people are shocked when I tell them that we got a lot of money, that GSB is prosperous, and then of course that raises other issues. But I think it's really important as a financial fellowship that we create a spending plan, at the very least to be able to say, hey, this is, what we have, this is what we want to do for the coming year, especially with the conferences. So I'm definitely for this, and Andrew and I are members of the Finance Committee, along with some new recruits, which is great. Maggie and Chris and Karen and Athena. I got it. And everyone's really excited. And, this committee met twice, Peter. He left. Twice. And we created a spending plan, and we actually have it, and we're going to adjust it. Thank you.
Anyone who would like to speak against the motion?
Can you restate the motion?
I can read it, and there's also going to be rewording that's done because of what Steve suggested that was accepted. Okay. But I'd be happy to read it as it stands if you'd like. Okay. Okay. You want me to? Yeah. All right. So we move that once a quarter by April 30th, July 30th, October 30th, and January 30th, the General Service Board, through the work of the Finance Committee, present to the UA Fellowship as a whole an income statement and a balance sheet for the most recent quarter and also year to date. This presentation would be to the GSRs through the monthly GSB meeting to bring back to their groups, and also through the newsletter, Voices of the Fellowship. You don't need an apostrophe S there. Number 2, also that the Finance Committee prepare a spending plan for the GSB to approve for presentation to the UA Fellowship for the upcoming quarter. This is the wording in question, which per the committee's approval is going to be changed based on what Steve's suggestion was.
It's going to take us a while to get that recording.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got it. I got it. We've already agreed that we're kosher here. And 3A, that the GSB compare in writing the figures from the most recent quarter and year-to-date with the corresponding spending plan for that period of time. 3B, that the GSB present the spending plan for the upcoming quarter and remaining year-to-date. That's the motion as it stands. The GSB may approve, they may not approve. That's going to be part of the wording.
Just to summarize the...
No, this is all one. This is their motion.
Just to summarize that interchange that's apparently confusing, I was trying to clarify by saying that the Finance Committee does a draft and presents it so that way the GSB doesn't have to do the work. Then the GSB has that draft, and it's their job to approve it either that way or amend it the way they see fit, because they have the authority to act on it. Thank you.
Well, once it's approved, then the whole idea is that it's presented to the fellowship. So it's not like it's approved and then it sits there. It's then dispersed where people can actually see it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So is there anyone that cares to speak against the motion? Is there one more person that would like to speak for the motion?
I will. My name's Chris, and I just think that this vagueness around money is something that we're all probably familiar with. So on a group level, on a world conference level, on a much bigger level, we should not be vague about our own finances of this fellowship. And this is one of the ways that we chose to have one of the most transparent ways of getting this information to everybody as quickly as possible and on a regular basis.
Thank you. All right. Anyone move to vote?
So moved.
Second? Second. All right. You stay out of this. All right. All those in favor? favor of the motion as presented and with the agreed changes that are going to be made? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Those opposed to the motion? Abstentions? 1, 2. Thank you. The motion passes. Don't applaud. We have no opinion on that motion.
This is an important motion.
This motion has just been pushed right through office, and it's just approved. The motion of Ed. Okay, so the next motion to come up, we need to still hear, we've got about 45 minutes left. We still need to hear from the Service Structure Committee, the Literature Committee, and then we're going to hear again from the Phone and Technology Committee. So can I have this, who's coming up? Service Structure Committee? Thanks, Janice.
Okay. So the Service Structure Committee is basically starting to work on the structure, help sort of make the format for the GSB meeting into a structure that'll help run it smoothly. But we were working on this one area for now that we had in motion form. So I'll just read it. GSB Committee, this is about making motions at the GSB meeting. GSB Committee chairpersons, individuals or groups may present motions to be added to new business. Motions are presented at one GSB meeting and added to the calendar agenda for the next GSB meeting. The time between the presentation of a motion at one GSB meeting and the voting on a motion at the next GSB meeting will provide the opportunity for a full discussion to occur. After the GSB meeting where a motion is presented by GSB committee, committee members will be asked to send an email description of the motion to all the members of the GSB, perhaps via the Google group, to engage in discussion regarding the motion. If a motion is presented by an individual or group, a GSB committee may be assigned to facilitate the full discussion. Members of the GSB committee are also encouraged to take the discussion of the motions presented by the GSB committees to the groups which they represent in order to add to the full discussion of each presented motion which the GSB receives. We made this motion to address the current situation where people can make ad hoc motions that are supposed to be voted upon in the same meeting, making considered decisions difficult. And it will slow down the decision-making process and make it harder to pass motions. So that's the cost and impact of this motion. Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody? Let's just leave this up. Okay. Is there anybody that's not clear about the motion that's presented or that would like to hear it repeated?
Could I get that repeated?
Yeah. GSB committee chairpersons, individuals or groups may present motions to be added to new business. Motions are presented at one GSB meeting and added to the calendar/agenda for the next GSB meeting. And keep in mind that those GSB meetings happen monthly. The time between the presentation of a motion at one GSB meeting and the voting on a motion at the next GSB meeting will provide the opportunity for a full discussion to occur. After the GSB meeting, so is everybody clear up to that point? Okay. After the GSB meeting where a motion is presented by a GSB committee, committee members will be asked to send an email description of the motion to all members of the GSB, perhaps via the Google group, to engage. I'll just put that in parentheses, perhaps via the Google group. Let me back up. After the GSB meeting where a motion is presented by a GSB committee, Committee members will be asked to send an email description of the motion to all members of the GSB to engage in discussion regarding the motion. If a motion is presented by an individual or group, a GSB committee may be assigned to facilitate full discussion. Members of the GSB committee are also encouraged to take the discussion of the motions presented by the GSB committees to the groups which they represent in order to add to the full discussion of each presented motion which the GSB receives. Questions?
Matt?
Hold on a second. Okay. All right, go ahead, what Peter's coming
I just want to make sure I have it clear because in order to vote on this properly. The gist for me is that motions would be brought to one GSB meeting and acknowledged. The voting would actually happen the next month. And in between that time, there would be, we would all get the motion. There would be time for discussion. There would be, if other committees needed to be involved, they would be involved at that time. So it's like creating a process that allows for a fuller discussion before voting.
Is that accurate, Janice?
Yes, it is, but a lot of that would take place, you know, either via the internet or email or one-on-one through the phone or
offline in between meetings.
Right.
So it's in keeping with the spirit that
Yes.
Peter presented, that we do the work before we come to vote on it.
Exactly, and it will go on the agenda for the next meeting, but depending on the agenda and old business, and it may or may not exactly get addressed, but it'll be on the agenda. So that's
Okay. Any Peter?
Yeah, two questions. So one is, you're proposing to treat all motions alike, that very small motions and very big motions will all be treated the same way, very consensual motions and very problematical motions will be dealt with the same way?
That is the issue. We are in the process of discussing what would be fair, you know, if we jump motions ahead or if it's just, that needs to be worked out. So
next question is, you seem to be having the discussion after the motion is presented. So you're presenting a motion, then you're discussing it. You're not coming to agreement before presenting the motion.
Well, based on that flow, okay, after I finish, based on that flow chart that we came up with yesterday where we have an issue and then it goes into a committee and then a committee comes up with the motion, it might have some discussion beforehand. Whatever the reason there's a motion presented, that's all it's addressing.
Is this discussion or questions?
This is just guidelines about how to get a motion.
You're asking him questions from Janice, and do you feel like you're getting...
So I can't put my opinion in this.
Well, I'm asking for clarity about the motion. Okay. We're not doing 2 for, 2 against, right? Fine. So did you get your questions answered?
No questions.
Okay. But it's important to me, Peter, you asked the questions. Did you get clarity? Because you're asking them for clarity. Did you get clarity on that? Okay.
Did he say yes or no? I'm trying to.
He said he got clarity. Ed, did you have a question? We're not doing back and forth. Did you have a question about the clarity of this?
No, I wrote it, so I know what it says.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to make a statement of clarity because I was part of the writing of it and just give a background. The idea was so that motions wouldn't be pushed in. Substantive major motions on major issues wouldn't be presented and a vote forced at the same meeting because there needs to be opportunity for discussion among the people in that meeting, and those people are representatives that need to go back. And so that's why on a major motion you're having people calendar it on the one time. Now they have a month, and you can have all this discussion offline outside of because the committee time is precious. So when you come back, people have had the opportunity. Now you have the actual discussion leading up to the vote at that next meeting, or they can table it, or they can do whatever they want, or send it back to committee. But it's just a delay so that you can have that discussion outside that meeting till you get to the next meeting. That's the purpose and the
intent of it.
Yes, the intent. Thank you.
Did you have a question?
No, I was part of the committee, and so I just want to offer some clarification around that particular issue about motions being presented at one meeting. what we intended was motions being presented at the meeting. There would be an explanation and clarification about the motion and some short discussion about it, and then it being taken offline, as Steve described. So that was the intention, that there wouldn't be the discussion, a major discussion when the motion was presented, but that there would be an explanation.
Question for clarity?
Yes, please. I think the first reading, but now that I'm seeing it on the board, I get nervous when motions are listed as new agenda items and then they turn into perpetual new agenda items. So when you go from one meeting to the next, where is it on the agenda for the next meeting? Is it in the current or is it still on the new?
Okay, so the way normally it goes is you have a list of agenda items,
right?
Old business, and then you go through it, and then you have, when you finish with the old, well, we're still trying to figure out what the way we want to do it in UA, but normally you go through your old business, and then when you finish that, you go to new business, and whatever new business is not covered within that meeting gets moved to old business in the next meeting, so that gets put first on the list.
I think that the experience that many of us have had is that has actually created a jam, a log jam, and we saw evidence of that this week. So the question that was presented by Peter is, then how do we qualify the priority of the motion? Because there are things that you're going to present that are going to be top priority, but they get backlogged, they require a lot of discussion, and then a whole bunch of other stuff doesn't come through. It's my sense, based on the questions for clarity, that the motion itself is not clear enough. No. So it's my suggestion.
May I address that issue?
I'm not finished. So it's my suggestion that that your committee reconvene, get more clear about the vision, the goals, and then what that would look like in action. Because if so many people are asking questions and the motion's right there, it's just not clear enough for people.
30 seconds.
May I make a suggestion?
Go ahead, Steve.
We were asked to just have one thing, and the one thing is to prevent someone from barging into this phone meeting, which is apparently out of control, that I'm told by many, many people, and presenting them from railroading a motion through on that meeting. This solves that problem. It doesn't solve every problem. This isn't a whole list of bylaws about all the other procedures. Those would be subsequent motions, but this will address that, and if you don't do it now, then I don't know when it'll get done. Well, and it's not perfect, and it can be changed, but it's directed to solve that problem and give some procedures so that we can have that open discussion. That's what the fellowship, I believe, the duty to the fellowship is be able to give that opportunity so that things get discussed and brought back for the following meeting. And that's only addressing that narrow issue. It doesn't discuss about the priority and which new business, old business. That has to be handled separately.
Well, there are two things that can help. First of all, is if it's to address that issue that's happening on the mainline phone meeting, there's a power much greater than the motion, and the power is group conscience. And it works like this. Anybody gets on that meeting at any time and calls an emergency group conscience. Somebody seconds that emergency group conscience. And then the issue that's happening at that meeting about the failure and the refusal to rotate leadership gets addressed. That group is then presented with that issue. The members that are on the meeting at that time vote on it. It changes or it doesn't change. That requires no motion. It requires nothing of what we're doing here.
Point of order. That's completely irrelevant to what we're talking about.
But he's addressing this motion in regards to that.
No, we're talking about, this is for the GSB meeting. We're not talking about other.
I totally apologize.
I'm only talking about the calendaring of that a motion at the GSB has to have 1 month so that it can go back to the fellowship and come back.
May I make a friendly amendment to it? Or a suggestion,
Thank you, Ed.
possibly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Franny, I've been on the GSB since 2008 or something, and just putting a different type of descriptions. In other words, if it's a major motion, that it can be brought out, with full disclosure, full discussion. But if it's an immediate motion, like something regarding coming to the World Service Conference that had to be decided in time, like a time-sensitive motion, So like just have definitions of like possible ones that, categories of motions. Is that a possibility to add to this so that there's ones that will be brought out in that way and there's ones that will be decided in time-sensitive order?
I just want to hear what it is.
Mr. Peter, are we still talking about the GSB motion?
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion that we send this back to the committee.
Help me in terms of procedure, because Franny asked if she could make a friendly amendment, and you accepted that.
Well,
second.
I think we still have to take it back and reword it and
Okay.
figure out how to
So you
how to
could
do
you
all
could
that.
just voluntarily take it back, and we don't have to even vote on it.
I would say that I would agree to that. You guys?
If we do that, will it be any time for us to bring it back?
No.
Chris, sorry, Steve, are you a GSR? Are you a GSR?
Hold on, Peter. So
okay.
do you voluntarily? I know that what you need is time, and we know that what you're proposing is vital in spirit.
Right.
So my question is, do you voluntarily take this off the table? Okay, so you don't voluntarily take this off the table. Okay, so
the motion stands. It's been seconded by Bella.
Okay, so there's been a motion to resend, correct?
Yeah, and I'll give you the
And it's
rationale.
been seconded.
It's been seconded.
That's okay.
Okay.
I don't need rationale. I need work to get done. Okay, so there's been a second. So. Okay, so now we're just simple majority vote to resend this back to the committee. Thank you. Those in favor of resending this motion back to the committee, with the understanding that they'll bring it back with the wording that the group's looking for. Ayes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe 15. Okay, those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Abstentions? I'm sorry?
Voted for a committee member, right?
Of course we vote.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm voting in favor then, sir.
You vote in favor of rescinding?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll add one. Abstentions? 1, 2. Okay, 3. Thank you, Eric. 4 abstentions. All right, so the motion's being resent back to the committee to be presented at a later time.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to thank the committee for its work.
Thank you.
All right, so the Literature Committee? Yep.
Right, who did not receive a copy of the principles when we handed it out the other night?
Yes.
Okay. Please come and take one. This was handed out the other night. If you have it, please do not take another and we have it again. The principles for the literature. There you go. Anybody else need one? All right. I got one already. All right. Can you do 2? I emailed, we went through this twice. If I can find it. Do you have the email I sent with the corrections? See it? What's it? I didn't get it. Okay, right, nobody has this. All right. So, the Literature Committee has presented these principles for acceptance by the conference as the principles for the Literature Committee. And this is a part of what will eventually become our service manual for UA. We went through this the other day exhaustively. I think we'll all agree. We changed the wording. I think for the better. It's my words, but I'm very happy we changed it. And then we also sat down and reviewed it in the Literature Committee and made some more changes that were also for the better. So if you look at the document right now, I'll read out the changes. I did email the changes to the World Service Conference, but apparently they're not there. So if we look at line 13, so for now, this may take the form of a book, an e-book, a pamphlet, or a worksheet. In the future, we envisage this may include audio, video recordings, apps, or websites, or parts of websites. Next change, line 16. We're no longer calling it conference-approved literature. There was very good agreement that approval carries the stigma of disapproval, which is not there. We're now calling it conference-created literature, which sends the message that we have in mind. And so on line 19, it's no longer the approval process, it's now the creation process. Line 23, conference created. And then line 27, strike everything after the comma. So it just says for sale to its members. No further comment. Line 36, strike that in its entirety. Line 44, literature created by other 12-step programs as opposed to for. The idea there is that some other World Service Conference has approved these things or created them or whatever they want to call it. That was line 44. So instead of for, it's by. And that's just to be specific that we're not necessarily talking about, say, earn what you deserve, which was specifically written for DA, but was written as an independent commercial venture. As an example. Line 58. Strike everything after services. Fees may be used to secure these services. That change was made to not enable people in their under-earning. And that's it. Now, I would hope that the people who weren't here the other night when this was discussed will feel their voices have been heard by voting on it today. I do not believe we have time to go through this line by line again. That's my personal opinion.
Questions for
Yeah,
clarity?
it's on the internet. I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you.
Are there questions for clarity about what was presented? Yeah.
Bella.
Could you just narrow in on the passage which says by again?
So, section 40, line 42 is 12-step literature. I'll read the whole paragraph with the change. It's only one word changed, and it's Bella's suggestion. Number 11 of the UA tools, a very valuable suggestion. Number 11 of the UA tools is 12-step literature. We have found that the literature created by other 12-step programs is generally helpful, and as such, it needs no further review or endorsement by UA.
Clear.
Are there questions for clarity?
Could you read that one more time?
Number 11 of the UA tools is 12-step literature. We have found that the literature created by other 12-step programs is generally helpful, and as such, it needs no further review or endorsement by UA.
Sounds good to me.
Question, Peggy? Here, you can, there's a mic. Okay.
So this, I'm not clear on what if it was created with 12-step literature like the steps themselves within it, but is being used for personal funds.
Sorry, which line are you talking about?
The same one, 12-step literature.
Okay.
So my example is a book that includes 12-step literature, meaning the 12 steps itself, but is being used for personal funds.
I don't think we care or know about that.
Okay, so
personally, we don't. We cannot know how another program created its book. I cannot, not in general. I don't think any of us can.
Well, so the confusion is by other 12-step programs. Has Gerald Mundus's book has not been created by other 12-step programs.
So specifically, that's not included.
Oh, okay.
I made that point before. That was a private book written by a private individual using DA principles.
Just a real quick comment on that. Do you want to include a little more of our wording of the in the tool why we use 12-step literature to
I
better
think that's,
understand? Or
if I can comment on that, I think that's a function of the tool to say. It's not the function of this document. That's my personal opinion.
Peter, it's Daryl. As a very newbie in this situation, on line 5, the Literature Committee is a subcommittee of the World Service Conference. Are all committees subcommittees of the World Service Conference?
To be clear, I don't know. I am defining this committee as a committee of the World Service Conference right here for clarity.
Okay, thank you. I'm not any clearer, but okay.
Any other questions for clarity? Okay. With the changes that have been presented and the understanding that there are no other questions for clarity, is there a motion to vote?
You can call a question, actually. Discussions. I got the discussion.
I'm sorry. Is there more discussion that people would like?
We've had questions. Now it's discussion. So for and against.
Right. Okay.
Maggie from Seattle. I just wanted on the record, and I discussed this with Peter, but I want to be sure that this motion addresses the fact, my concern that later on down toward the end it says something about using volunteers to write literature, and because
we've taken that out.
You've taken it out completely.
I mentioned that
Great.
as we went through it.
Thank you.
I'd like. Are you taking calls?
Yeah, we'll do one for, against.
This is a discussion
I'd
for or
like
against.
to speak for.
Thank you.
Incredible process that we went through for all of those who stayed in it, and the corrections have been stellar, and I vote very much for all of us. Everyone said we need literature. Thank you.
One against. One more for.
Maybe we'll start with votes against.
I think it's a great starting point. And when I read through it, what I saw was built into the document is room for growth, room for inclusion, and room for us to go back and edit and improve as we work along. I think that's perfect for what we're here for at the conference and what we're about as a fellowship. It gives us room to get better at who we are and what we're doing, and it's built right in. So I think it's a brilliant effort.
Right.
I apologize. I have a question of clarity. I know I'm coming in late to the game here. I'm new at this. So moving forward, so I'm thinking like when people show up in a couple hours and they ask, did you decide about conference-approved literature? If this motion were to pass, I could say, we don't address conference-approved literature. We address conference-created literature.
Absolutely.
We have no opinion on, and we have no...
No. You can clarify that. One of the things we've done is clarify what we mean by conference... Sorry. The clarification is given by these principles that we're not, when we approve things, when we approve literature, we're approving its creation. That's what we're approving. So conference-approved literature means the same thing as conference-created literature. And for clarity, we're calling it conference-created literature.
So I can say to anybody, we only approve literature that we've created. If we didn't create it, we don't approve of it, we don't disapprove of it, period. Call your sponsor.
We don't talk to that, but that's my understanding.
Right.